Hello, and nice to be back, and nice to see you all. Hope you had a good rest and that you are excited about this presentation. Um, this is my favorite one to share, and I'm happy to be able to do it here with you. Um, we all need resilience, and my question I'd like to ask you, and feel free to answer back. What is resilience to you? How do you understand this word? What is resilience? Or what does it mean to be resilient?
Be strong.
To be strong? Yeah.
To have discipline.
To have discipline? Yeah. Yeah.
That's a very good Finnish word that describes you.
Okay.
Sisu.
Sisor.
Yeah.
All right. I learned some Finnish today. That's amazing. Okay. And what does sisu mean in English?
Never give up.
Never give up. Okay, I love it. Okay, I should write that down. All right, any others?
How you can manage stress.
Yeah, yeah.
Stamina.
So it's a type of coping mechanism. Yeah, yeah. Great. So, resilience. I like this picture because you can see everything might be falling down, but something is helping us to stand firm, stand on the ground. And so we can do that if we have a strong foundation. But of course, we talked about the foundation yesterday, how important it is to have a good lifestyle, to be eating healthy. And today we will discuss a little bit more about what it means to have a strong mind and a strong mindset as well. Here's the definition of resilience according to the dictionary. Resilience is a psychological term for the ability to deal with stress and disasters or other adversity, and that a child proved to be resilient to mental problems. People who have good resilience are able to handle crisis and stress in a positive way. I'll try not to speak too quick so we can have the translators not to be overworked. It's a hard task to translate. When I'm speaking and when somebody would be translating, they would be working 3-4 times as hard, listening and also doing the translation. So I'll try and do my best not to speak too quick. If I do become a bit too passionate, just raise your hand. I will try to speak slower. Nice. Resilience. Imagine that you have a ruler here. You bend it and it will come back to the same shape. This is basically what resilience is. Something happens to us and we bounce back. I like that word, bouncing back. Let's say that this would be a ruler. Let's say that I were to leave it and I have a weight on it and I leave it for half a year. What happens when I go back? Will it bend back?
No.
It will probably stay the same. Maybe it will bend a little bit back, but mostly it would stay the same. And this is actually what is happening with us if we experience so much trauma or that we get pulled down time after time after time again. We lose some of the resilience. We lose the effect of bouncing back. But luckily, there's certain ways that we can deal with it to regain some resilience that we have had in the past. I had a conversation with a stranger some years ago, and that became my motivation of sharing this presentation. I was sharing about anxiety and depression for a class at a point, and I offered to do one-on-one coaching. And she was one of those who decided to have a private conversation with me, and she was just sharing her hard story, her testimony with me. She came from a broken home. Her father was very violent. You had domestic violence in the family. He was often not really there. He was absent. And at some point they got divorced and she didn't really see her father anymore growing up. She was bullied in school. and when she got into high school, she became attracted to women. And some of the guys were even bullying her for that, saying that she didn't look pretty enough for any guy ever to have an interest in her. So they were really, really vicious towards her. And this was basically her life. So imagine her life or herself like being a ruler. All the weight would just keep pouring down on her. And this led to a very, very deep depression. She started to not enjoy living in her country, so she decided to live abroad, and she became consumed by media, mainly movies. She was starting to study at the university how to produce movies. And so she would consume movie after movie after movie and study it and try to make her own. And that led to even a deeper depression. Remember how yesterday we talked about addictions? One of the addiction is just consuming a lot of media. With all the frames in films that is just changing all the time, it's very stressful for the mind. And if we consume too much, it can lead to depression. So with her upbringing and with everything that she had been going through, she was in a very, very bad depression state as I met her. So she was just sharing her very difficult stories, and what I will share with you now is what I shared with her and some of the principles we went through yesterday as well, just so that she could rebound a little of that resilience that was lost. Because one of the big issues we have is how we look upon ourselves. And we have this guy Deveti. He came up with this self-concept, and I think you'll be able to see yourself through his way of approaching ourself and our self-worth. Your image of who you are is your self-concept, and it's composed of your feelings and thoughts about your strengths and weaknesses, your abilities and limitations. Your self-concept developed from at least these three sources. And now we will go into more detail of what this means in a more practical manner. Great. Translations are up to speed. Good. Number one, the image that others have of you and that they reveal to you. How many have seen American Idol? How many have seen the first editions where not everybody is well at performing? It could be that they're singing, but it sounds like you were pulling a cat's tail. It sounds awful. And then the judges is asking them like, why are you here? Who taught you that you could sing? And often they would say, well, my grandma or my mom or somebody random. So basically, somebody else told them they had a talent for singing, and that was why they went to audition, because they had a dream of becoming a superstar. But that dream clashed immediately because somebody else told them a different story. And then you have to decide, who do you believe? Do you believe your grandma, or do you believe the judges who is responsible for the auditions? And then that can create a bit of a trigger. But we have all been in this situation. Somebody tells us something and we start to believe it. The same is with the media today, especially when it comes to young women. They would see models on Instagram, and this is becoming normal, how to look. So you'll go to the gym, you'll do this, you'll be doing this. But of course you don't have a team behind every photo in Photoshop to make your appearance just absolutely perfect in the eyes of the media. So the image that others have of you and that they reveal to you. So somebody is telling you something about yourself. Number two, the comparison you make between yourself and others. Again, back to social media, you look at your own photo, you look at somebody else, and it might not be that you are satisfied with what you see in the mirror. It could also be that you are comparing yourself with somebody else. Let's say in school doing math, It could be that you were the top in your class, you got amazing grades, top A's, then you moved to another school, and all of a sudden somebody got a better grade than you. And now you have the struggle. Am I good at math? Was it just my teacher who favored me? Or could it be something else? So this is something that is ongoing in our life, in our journey, every day, all the time, basically. The last is the way you interpret and evaluate your own thoughts and behaviors. Unfortunately, not all women are very good at believing in yourself and your own abilities. There's a higher rate of men having, excuse me, having higher paid jobs and higher positions because they are going for it. Even though that they might be less qualified, often they would get the job because they apply, because not all women have good self-esteem or believe in your own abilities, and therefore don't try to get this type of job. So you compare yourself with others, think that others are better than you, and sometimes it's also the other way around, where you believe that you're better than somebody else, and this is why you're going to apply for this job, even though you are not qualified, and it might be that you can convince the person on the other side of the table. You end up having the job, and you might be able to pull it off, but it might also be that that you become downgraded because you overspoke, you oversold yourself. So we can see this become an internal battle about what? About performance. Because this creates kind of a cynical worldview. You are what you do, you are what you have, you are what other people say about you. Does it make sense? Is this what this type of mindset is producing in us? Is this what the media is telling us to do? You have to do this to have this life, to be happy? What if there would be a better way? What if there would be a more holistic way of approaching our identity and who we are? Two examples. One is from Jim Carrey. I'm assuming most people here know about Jim Carrey, a famous actor. He has this quote: "I think everyone should be rich, famous, and do everything they ever dreamed of so they can see this is not the answer." Does that apply with this type of cynical worldview, where you have to produce to be able to be happy? What about Steve Jobs? "I reached the pinnacle of success in the business world. In others' eyes, my life is an epitome of success. However, aside from work, I have little joy. In the end, wealth is only a fact of life that I'm accustomed to." It was just normal. At this moment, lying on the sickbed and recalling my whole life, I realized that all the recognition and wealth that I took so much pride in have paled and become meaningless in the face of impending death. You can employ somebody to drive the car for you, make money for you, but you cannot have somebody to bear the sickness for you. Materials lost can be found, but there is one thing that can never be found, which is lost: life. This is one of his famous quotes just before he died. He passed away with cancer. So yes, he was able to buy certain things. He could hire somebody to wash his car, but that wasn't meaningful. Actually, a lot of very rich and people who have succeeded in the business world, as they become old, as they look back in life, they realize there's so many things that they had to give up to be able to reach the 1% of society, of the career ladder. Looking back, they could see that they had to give up friendships, family. They could not be present at anniversaries, birthdays, and different events because of their work. Because their work basically became their identity. I love motivational quotes, and here are two that I really find to be very, very powerful and very meaningful. The greatest battle ever fought is the battle of the mind. Can everybody recognize this? We all have this like internal battle. It can be a battle about our self-worth and of course many other different things. He that is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he that ruleth his spirit than he that taketh a city. Here we're talking about self-control. The self-control of not overworking or having to prove yourself in a society where it's all about performance, or all about having more than the Joes next door. Excuse me. Viktor Franklin, very, very fascinating guy. We will spend a little bit of time getting to know him. He has a very interesting quote. Decisions, not conditions, determine what a man is. Viktor Franklin. We will look a little bit about his life. How many of you have heard about Viktor Franklin before? Okay, quite a few of you. Very, very fascinating guy. He has written a book, Man's Search for Meaning. The book was written by Austrian psychiatrist Viktor Franklin. He was a psychologist before he were into a concentration camp, actually several who survived several Nazi concentration camps during World War II, including Auschwitz. He describes both his personal experiences and the psychological insight he gained from them. The first part of the book is life in the concentration camp. Franklin explains how life in the camps stripped people of everything that once gave them meaning. Freedom, dignity, and family. Yet some managed to hold on to hope while others gave up. He realized that the difference often depending on having a purpose. Those who found a reason to live, love, hope, or a mission had greater chance of surviving both physically and mentally. This part, having a purpose, very, very important. After the war, Franklin developed logotherapy. This is a form of therapy based on the idea that man's primary drive is not pleasure, as Freud would say, or power, as Adler would say, but meaning. He identified three mains where to find meaning. So it's a different line of psychology. Freud, of course, is all about sexuality, and Adler all about power, and this meaning. And I'm much more inclined to this, as I see it more fitting and more meaningful as well, of course. Number one, through working or creation, doing something meaningful, through love, relationships, connecting deeply with others, through one's attitude towards suffering. And of course, there was a lot of suffering where he saw, but he found an antidote in meaning of despair, choosing how to respond when life cannot be changed. This was basically what his type of therapy is about, finding meaning even in hopeless situations. With that type of mindset, we can now look into how can we change habits. It takes about 21 days to change a habit, and about 62 days to maintain a habit. New Year resolutions is just around the corner. In average, people last about 10-12 days and then they go back. Why is that? Because they are only in the first part of the stage of change. You need the 21 day to be determined, to be having a strong willpower, to have good frontal lobe decisions, and then to maintain that habit take at least 62 days. If you break the cycle and go back, of course, the time comes to a stop. Then you need to redo and go on for a bit longer time. How can we change ourselves, our perception, and become more resilient? The amazing thing is that our brain is plastic, meaning that our brain has the capacity of change. And as we are learning something, actually what happens inside of our brain is it comes on a physical chemistry structure. I took this photo of a wire because every time that we are changing our habits or if we're learning something new, what happens is we get one more little cover thread into our wire. And for every little thread, something becomes easier. When you had to learn how to bike or swim, the first time was not as easy. The same learning a language, learning a trade, learning a skill. It took time to understand it and to master it. But with time, it just became easier. And at some point, you'll be all wired up and be ready to execute without blinking. How many have to go through an entire manual to be able to ride a bike? You can just go on a bike and you know exactly how to bike immediately, but when you start it, you'll be trembling, not so easy. The same by driving a car. I remember when I took my driving lessons, just the shifting of gear and the timing and the motor changes wasn't so easy. But now I don't blink, I don't think, I just do everything automatically. And we will see the same taking place by changing our behavior and to some extent, with time, even our self-concept. We spoke about this yesterday, the 4 stages of change. I just want to really quick go through them again. Stage 1, unconscious incompetent. You're not aware of a negative trait that you have, something that is unhealthy for you. It could be how you view yourself. Then you become conscious incompetent. You hear something that inspires you, but also something that makes you aware that what you're doing is not healthy. Maybe you have been doing some self-harm, but you didn't see it as self-harm until somebody pointed it out to you. And now you have a decision to make. You become conscious, competent. You learn how to deal with different situations, and you get some more tools so you don't fall back as you used to do. And all of a sudden you have stage 4, unconscious competent. It's no longer a struggle. You're not dealing with the same issues of the past. You have become a new, better version without that negative trait or self-destroying voice inside of your head anymore. Motivation is the key of success in everything that we do. When it comes to learning or improving our skills or to continue that New Year's resolutions. Motivation is the inner force that drives us to learn something new or change our behavior. This is called motivation. Motivation is of great importance for all activity and is a prerequisite for playing sports, learning and getting better. And we have 2 types of motivation. The first type, photo, great. The first one is inner motivation, we have outer motivation. Inner motivation is you love what you're doing. You're just having fun. Remember the sheet I had yesterday with the flow? You forgot about time, where you are, you're just enjoying it. So inner motivation is the activity itself. You're just enjoying it. It's just fun. You're just passionate at the experience in connecting with the activity that provides the drive force. You just love it. Me personally, doing sports, I'm not competitive with others than myself. I just enjoy running, for example, and I just enjoy becoming better. I just enjoy being outside, doing this activity, and I forget completely about time. I'm listening to something informative while running, and I'm just enjoying it. And as I go back, I'm like, I look forward for in 2 days, because then I can be going out and getting another run. So that's my motivation. I'm just enjoying it. Then you have outer motivation. If the activity or learning takes place because of an opportunity for reward, for example, in form of money, prize, or social status and fame, that would be outer motivation. In sports, there's some people who cheat, who take steroids or different drugs to perform better. Which motivation type do you think that is the drive for them? Is it the inner motivation? Do they just enjoy what they're doing so they want to perform better, and that's the motivation of taking drugs to win a competition? No, it's outer motivation. It's cheating. They want the reward. They want the cash that goes with winning the prize or the fame. But it could also be you taking an education. Going to university, hard, tough work, exams, super stressful. But it's a stepping stone. It's a stepping stone for a job, a career, a life that you're dreaming of. But if you don't enjoy it, learning, becoming better, then you're driven by outer motivation, even if you're taking an education. It could also be a part-time job, just because if you work in this company for a while, with a boring job, then in a year, you might be able to get a raise or move up in the system, and that is where you want to be. Then that is a stepping stone, and that's okay. We have all been there, but if we can try to figure out what is it that drives us, what is it that motivates us, what is it that is fun to do, where can we be in flow? If we figure out what that is, we'll be having a much more fun and much more meaningful life. But we have an enemy, and the enemy is our self-pity. And I like to call that the limbic system equation, we could say that. The limbic system is the part of the brain involved in our behavioral and emotional responses, especially when it comes to the behaviors related to survival, hunger, reproduction, and caring for our youth, and the fight or flight response. We have two systems. We have the limbic system and we have the frontal lobe. I would like to suggest that both can be worked as a muscle. What you feed it with, what you train it with, that will increase the drive. So if we're very emotional driven, it's all about our feelings, what we want to do, then the limbic system becomes very, very strong. But if we learn to have good discipline, if we learn a bit of like science and benefits of exercise or good eating habits and healthy foods, then we have an easier time making a frontal lobe decision to have a healthier lifestyle. But this is so tricky. We have here a poor little mouse, and this is the pleasure trap. The pleasure trap is basically this poor mouse has the device connecting to the pleasure trap, pleasure area connecting inside of the brain. Every time it pushes this button, a dopamine response will be activated. It has all the access of food, water, hamster wheel. It can be exercising, happy mouse. But it has this little fix. And what often happens, or actually what this study shows, is that it will die of starvation and hunger because it is seeking pleasure. It's just pushing, and it's forgetting about what is important. Even it starts to die due to starvation. So this is the pleasure trap. Then we have behaviorism. Paolo, he had this experience where every time he would feed his dog, he would ring a bell. And after a time, he could ring the bell and the dog would know that now it's time to be fed. And when a dog now knows now it's time to be fed, it starts to produce saliva. So that was the response. So the bell became a trigger. It would start to produce saliva. It was ready to be fed. And that is behaviorism. So we can teach ourselves certain behaviors. For example, the habit of watching television is very hard to get away from if you are giving your brain a treat. It could be chocolate, it could be potato chips, it could be candy, it can be different things, because now you're getting yourself a reward, while the brain, just by watching television, is a reward itself. So now you have a hard cycle to beat if you want to do something else. You become driven. The limbic system is like, well, it's kind of nice. It's nice, it's cozy. The couch is comfortable. Snacks is amazing. Why would you go for a run? The brain would be like, why would you want to torture yourself? And the frontal lobe would be like, well, it's kind of nice. We heard some things in a lecture from a funny Danish guy that it would be beneficial for us. We'll be better dealing with anxiety, and there's other benefits to it. And the brain will be like, well, there's potato chips in the closet. There's chocolate under the couch. Do you really want to go outside? It's cold, it's snowing. So you have this internal battle. And if the frontal lobe is not strongly developed, the will be easily taken out of the equation, and you start to have self-pity. So what do? Science show that to help the frontal lobe to make quicker decisions and for you to have quicker responses, if you start acting upon impulses that are good, that are healthy for you, within 8-12 seconds, then your frontal lobe will be strengthened, like a muscle doing strength training. But if you hesitate, then the limbic system will actually be strengthened. So if you are standing under your shower tomorrow or this evening, it's very nice, it's very warm, and you have the thought of, maybe I should do this contrast shower, maybe I should do a cold one. If you do it immediately, what you're doing is actually giving a boost for the frontal lobe in the decision making. Even though it's not comfortable, it's very cold, it can be painful for some even, but because you do it in a very quick response, that is helping you to make decisions quicker when it comes to responses. The life and thinking of resilient people, and this is basically what they do. Resilient people, they take very quick decisions. If something is beneficial for them, they act upon it. And very resilient people, they act upon it in a very, very quick manner. Excuse me. Resilient individuals focus on what they can do something about and accept the unknown as part of life. Is this easy? It's quite tricky. I like to be in control of everything. I'm a bit of a perfectionist still, even though I have learned to know and accept that I cannot be in control of everything, even though I would like to try. So I have had to learn that there's certain things that I have control over, but not everything. That's part of life. They would also ask themselves, will what I do now improve or worsen my situation? So the brain is talking again. We should go for a run. There's potato chips in the closet. We should go for a run, but there's chocolate. And then you start to think, will what I do now improve or worsen my situation? So you make that frontal lobe decision. Another thing is, memory is connected to your emotions. New knowledge changes our emotions. For example, let's say that you had a robbery. There's a thief who stole something. It could be your favorite jewelry, and the police caught the person. And the person's response was, I'm very sorry, but I owned a gang money, and if I didn't get the money in time, they would harm me. Then it's a very different story compared to, well, I saw your jewelry and I thought it was nice, so I broke into your house to get it. There's not really the same amount of empathy or sympathy for the same person. So your experience is very different. It could also be that in the past somebody have wronged you, but as you understand what triggers people and maybe you understand a little bit about where they came from, it's easier for you to understand why their evil behavior towards you were just a response of them dealing with a trauma from a broken home. I remember when I was growing up, there was particular one guy who was a bully and he gave me a hard time in school. And growing up, learning a bit about psychology, behaviorism, I could see that this was just the case. He was just a broken person, and the way he was acting out was just a reaction of what was happening at home. And that helps me to deal with that and see him as just a human being instead of seeing him as a monster. So it helps us to have certain information and to have certain knowledge. And if we can try to incorporate that with negative feelings about others, we will be put in a better place. Change is inevitable, but growth is a choice. The same dealing with somebody who have wronged us in the past, we can decide that we can see that as a learning experience. We can grow from it, but the other can also be the case where we don't learn from it. And there's a tendency that we do the same mistake over and over again because we didn't sit down and figure out what was the trigger, what was the cause, and how could I have changed or behaved differently in that situation. I think we have all been in places where we can recognize that. So taking the time to emotionally dig deep into the pain, figure out what was the cause, or why am I addicted to this? What is the main cause? What is the trigger? To figure that out. Going back to this conversation I had with a stranger, as I mentioned in the beginning, it was clear that her self-concept came from the broken home that she was raised up in. She had a very big distrust in men because of her father and her classmates bullying her. So I was very, very, very happy that she somehow could trust me as a man who, because often it was men who had wronged her in her life, but somehow she saw some confidence in me and was able and willing to share her very, very hard, difficult story with me. I was very, very moved by that. And I think and I hope that just her having that experience where she would be able to see a man listening and not judging, but trying to help and motivate her would be a win for her towards recovery. Experience is what we have learned from a process. It's not every process where we learn something, but sometimes we just need to sit with the pain. We need to figure out what was the cause. How can this be turned around to something positive? The positive things could be, I'm not going to do that again. I'll do everything that I can to prohibit it from happening. And we can take that as that is. I have a friend who I mentioned yesterday. The friend who was highly addicted to smoking weed. He called me some time after. We'd been in the summer cabin about a year, maybe 2 years after, and I could hear that he was quite distressed as we spoke on the phone. And I asked him, when is the last time that you smoked? And he said, well, yesterday or 2 days ago. And I'm like, okay, how many times did you smoke since we went to the summer cabin? And he's like, maybe 8, maybe 12. And he was quite beaten up about it. Then I asked him this question: how many times did you want to smoke, but you didn't? And he said, wow, 100 at least. And I told him, why are you counting your defeats instead of your victories? You're looking at your shortcomings, and that has become who you are, and you become so depressed, you become so sad about your situation where you have actually gained victory more than 100 times. Why are you counting your failures instead of your wins? That was like twitching on a button inside of his mind. He realized, actually, that is true. But we're all doing it. For some reason, we are counting our defeats instead of being happy and thankful that sometimes we are not defeated, but we come out stronger as conquerors. We just have to figure out what is it, what was it that made a difference for him in the 100 times where he didn't smoke, where he wanted to. So that was my follow-up question. What was it that he did, and what was the situations behind where he made a frontal lobe decision of not smoking, even though his limbic system was screaming at him, I want pain release because this is painful. What was it that kept him from doing that? That is the important question, and that is where the experience we learn from a process come into play. And if he starts to learn to introduce that and go back to that in his life, he is more likely to stay sober for the rest of his life instead of having to do these rebouncing. Yeah, share that. Now I want to give you an experience where you get to make a frontal lobe decision. We'll go through a bit of theory, and I will make, for some of you, maybe a difficult appeal. But we are in the same boat. We are heading for one direction, and that is to be more resilient and to develop a good, strong, healthy mind. So here we go. Johns Hopkins University. The best predecessor of who would get cancer decades later was the close relationship between father and son early in life. This became a motivation for Howard University, who did a follow-up Master of Stress study, actually focusing on one thing, and that is the father-son relationship. They found that 82% of the participants who had a low warmth and closeness with their fathers had diagnosis in midlife, compared with 50 of those who had a high warmth and close score with their fathers. 32% increase in diseases if your relationship with your father in the early stages of life was low. I would like to suggest that the reason, and this is the only logical reasoning that I can see, is something broke that relationship. There was some type of disappointment. Again, our memory is connecting to our emotions, and it's up to us how we want to manifest anger, disappointments versus forgiveness. The guy who taught me this anxiety depression recovery program in Australia, he had an encounter with a gang or mafia, or however you could call it, in Australia. He was running a clinic with anxiety, depression, and a lot of people with addictions were coming. The gang had control of all the rehab centers in the city, very, very big city. I think it was in Victoria in Australia, but not this clinic. And they saw that a lot of the persons who used to have an addiction went to this clinic. They stopped buying the drugs, and they were no longer really controlled by the mafia or by the gangs. So they decided to go into the clinic, and they were forcing them to have control over it. Now David, before he started his psychology education, he used to work in the military. He trained in the military in South Africa, So his response was he could not yield because he knew exactly what the battle was about. It was about who is the alpha of the group, and if he would allow them to rule him, everything would be lost. And with his training, he knew how to deal and who to deal with. He was looking for who is the leader of the group. He figured out who the leader was, and he was trying the best to be on top of him. Unfortunately, that led to a very violent event, because not everybody has reasoning. You cannot reason yourself out of a violent situation. So what happened was that they destroyed the door, they destroyed certain windows, and they even had a rifle. They smacked him in the back of his head. Bleeding was coming. He started to bleed. He was knocked out unconscious, and they basically rived or destroyed the place. But his clients and his staff were safe because it was David dealing with this situation. People had time to escape. So as he was dealing with the situation, the best of his abilities, and as he was praying to God for protection and for wisdom, he was the only one who were exposed to the violence of this mob. When he finally got back on his feet again, he had a staff meeting, talking with the people who was there. He was doing trauma therapy with them, which was also beneficial for himself. And he called the carpenter and people who could come in and fix the clinic so it would be able to be up and running as quick as possible. Then he went home. He had already informed his wife of what had happened, so she wouldn't get a big shock when she would see him with the blood and with the pieces of clothes that was damaged due to the glass. And the next day he got up, he read his Bible, he did his normal routines, and he went back to work. Because of his training, he knew how important it was to continue your habits and not allowing yourself to be a victim. He knew that the next week was crucial for his own mental state, and what he did was very, very tough. He continued working, he continued looking people in the eye, and he continued the leader, and tried to encourage his staff to continue even though the trauma, and they could see the glass being repaired, they could see what had happened in the room. But and of course you had the fear of them coming back. But he informed them that this was a worthy case fighting for, and they needed to continue because people were depending upon them. And the amazing thing was that the mafia never came back. What is more interesting is this part of the story. A couple of years later, he was doing a community service event, an anxiety stress recovery program throughout 8 weeks. People would meet once a week, and a guy came up and asked him, "Do you remember me?" David said no, and he said, "I'm so sorry, David. I'm so sorry." And he said, "What are you talking about?" The one he was facing now was the one who was in charge. He was the one who was causing all the suffering. He was the one who knocked him out with the rifle. And now he was on the other side of the table. He was in need of help. He was in need of somebody with the capacity of David, helping him to deal with anxiety, dealing with his depression, because what he had seen, what he had lived through with all the violence, all the abuse, the drugs, it just overpowered him, and he became so low, he had major anxiety and depression. And he asked David if he could forgive him, and if he would allow him to be part of this course of rehabilitation, so he would be able to no longer have anxiety or depression. What do you think David did? He gave him a big hug and said, "You are more than welcome, and I want you to be part of this program." because I know that this will help you to heal. It's not easy to forgive somebody who have wronged you. The next story is a very good friend of mine. When she was only 8 or 10, one of her friends raped her. And this happened over and over again. And even until recently, she would wake up with nightmares where she would see what was done happening to her over again. Sometimes she would be working or she would be outside doing something, and these pictures would just run through her mind over and over again. It was controlling her life. Recently, she decided to contact him, and she found his phone number and she called him, shaking, waiting for a response. He picked up the phone. He told him, who she was, and he said, "I think I know why you're calling me." She said what was done and how it had affected her life, but she also told him, "I forgive you." He explained from his side what these events of being a perpetrator had negative consequences in his life, and he expressed also his gratitude of her reaching out. It meant a lot to him to know that she was able and capable and willing to forgive him. Something amazing happened for my friend. After she forgave him, it was like change was no longer holding her back. She no longer had the nightmares or the negative feelings or waves of the past rolling over her. It was as she was set free. You can have the same experience. Number 3, I heard of a guy at the health retreat in Australia. It's no longer there. It's called Abide. It was called Abide, and they were very, very good at dealing with cancer patients. This man was dealing with cancer and he didn't respond to any of the treatments, and they couldn't understand why is it that you're not getting better. And one of them asked him, "Is there something that you're holding on to from your past? Did somebody wrong you?" And he said, "Yes, and I will never forgive that person. What they did was so evil, was so wrong, I will never do it." And so the person told him about the importance of forgiveness and how that very likely is linked to his condition. Now, looking back at this study, do you think it makes sense? Do you think it makes sense that if 82 of the participants with long warmth, close relationship with the fathers would be diagnosed with diseases in midlife, that this could actually be one of the reasons why this man could have cancer? Or why some of us has different diseases? Because the tension, the negativity, the fear, the anger is doing something in us that is causing our self-harm. So an appeal was made, reasoning was being shared, and the guy decided to forgive. And what happened a few days later was he started to respond to the therapy. He started to be better. The Hebrew word for forgiveness is nasa. This is how you write it. You can recognize this part, nasa, and it literally means to lift up. This is why NASA, the rocket company in America, makes a lot of sense. Lift off. This is basically what they're saying. 3, 2, 1, we have lift off. Quite adequate. Or to carry or to take away. Forgiveness is not a feeling, it's a decision. It's literally taking these boxes or taking the negativity that's piling up as negative tower and placing it somewhere else. You make a decision, you make a frontal lobe decision to forgive this person or these persons or whatever happened to you. and it is as blowing in the wind, it's just gone. But the decision is yours. When I was in Australia, I saw massive trees. What is behind here is called a gum tree. It can grow 20, 30, 40 meters tall. Amazing, beautiful tree. But around it, you have what is called a stroking date tree. And this is basically what we can see. We can see here the host tree, the gum tree. But this, around it, growing up beside it, is slowly killing it. It's strangling it. It's piercing through the skin and is sucking out, stealing some of the nutrients from the roots. And after about 20 years, the gum tree or the host tree, the mother tree, dies. And so does the stroking date tree. I'd like to suggest this is exactly what holding on to grudges, wrongdoings is doing to ourselves. By taking a chainsaw, by lifting up, by replacing our negativity and forgiving is basically the same thing. Taking the chainsaw and you will feel that what was holding you down, what was keeping you anxious at night, slowly starts to fade away. So again, individuals who have strong resilience, they focus on what they can do something about and accept the unknown as part of life. They ask themselves, would what I do now improve or worsen my situation? Here's the appeal. Is there something that is holding you back? Is there somebody who have wronged you in the past you haven't forgiven? And are you willing, because of the information now given, to make that decision for you to be set free? Something to wrestle with in your chambers as you go back home. But the promise is you'll have the same experiences as David, my friend, and the gentleman from the health retreat called Abide. Albert Einstein has this quote: "What is right is not always popular, and what is popular is not always right." It takes resilience to stand out and do what is right. And this leads us to the nether part of the presentation, where we look upon highly moral people. Resilient individuals have a very, very high moral compass. Resilient people have a good sense of what is right and what is wrong, even in situations where they might risk their lives. They may think of others and not just of themselves. How many have seen the war movie from Second World War, Schindler's List, I think it's called? Amazing, amazing movie. Strongly recommend seeing that. Schindler was a man with a very, very high moral compass, very, very resilient man. Basically what he had was, he had wealth, he was wealthy. He had a factory and he turned that factory into a weapon production for the Germans. But he had intentionally made an incorrection in whatever was being produced so it couldn't harm anybody. So basically he was being paid by the Germans to produce weaponry that was defect, that couldn't kill or harm anybody. With that money, he was able to buy Jews who were supposed to go to a concentration camp. And he saved so many people's lives from going to the gas chambers. In the end of the movie, you see a scene where he's very sad. The war has finally come to an end. He's taking off a ring and he's looking at this piece of gold and he just wants to throw it away. Why? Because he could have saved X amount of people more if he would just have sold it. He was not happy that he had something of value that he could have given or sold so that other people might live. And as he is sharing this, somebody else told him, "You already did so much. It shows his love, his care, he's resilient. He was a man who stood up against what was wrong. Not many were able to do that. Very, very strong character. You have Doctors Without Borders, and you have other institutions, people in the front line dealing with difficult things, and they're there because they're resilient. They want to stand out, they want to make a difference in this world, and they have a very high moral compass. Lauchmann has two ways in which our moral compass can change. Number one, to witness or to experience or do something that goes against your will. Can you see a pattern now? Everything, as I see it, is connecting to the frontal lobe. If you do something that goes against your conscience, it is like taking brick after brick from the tower and you become worse off. It becomes worse and you become a worse version of yourself. It also happens when a person becomes involved in the work culture that overshadows other culture. What if your job is somehow connecting with scamming people? Occasionally I get a scam call. I don't think too highly of the people behind them. Maybe they have a family, maybe they need to provide, and this is the only job that they can do. The same goes with certain illegal activities. Illegal fishing, for example. What they do is illegal, but they also have a family to provide for. And somehow it's very hard to have black and white, but nevertheless, to have a high moral compass is doing what is right, even though it's difficult. And if we start to compromise what we believe in, we become changed. And we will be more likely to become depressed. We will have regrets. And sometimes we even have to face ourselves, look ourselves in the mirror, and even forgive ourselves of what we have done, because we were not strong enough or willing to stand our ground. There's 4 elements of the moral compass, according to Holton Rushton. Number 1 is to define your moral compass and your values. This is why you see companies, kind of like their identity they share with people is, we are this, we do this, this is our purpose, this is why we do what we're doing. It can be helpful to do the same depending on what type of job that you have. Let's say that you are a lawyer. I would have a very hard time defending somebody I believe did a crime. But nevertheless, this is a job, this is their rights. To define your moral compass and your values, well, you have to protect, and because of the court system, to be just, you have to do your job. But what happens if your motivation becomes, well, if I win the case, I would get more money. And now you are willing to compromise and tell a stronger case or a stronger study or do something shady because you can benefit from it. So very important that you have a high moral compass. And again, happens when a person becomes involved in the work culture that overshadows the other culture. Sometimes we do that. It could be, for example, a lawyer defending somebody who they knew did the crime. Just an example. Develop self-control and self-restraint even, David Howden, when he was studying at university, one of his professors asked him in front of the entire auditorium, David, do you smoke? And he said, no, I don't. And the lecturer, his professor said, David is going to be a very, very good psychologist. Then he asked him, do you drink? And he said, no. And he said, David is going to be a very good psychologist. And he went through a list with watching media, doing this, doing that. And And at some point, somebody from the lecturing hall became so agitated, stood up, yelled out, "What is it that makes David a better psychologist than the rest of us?" This was the point that the lecturer wanted to do, his professor, because David had made certain decisions in his life that his frontal lobe would be the strongest. And so with the media, with the drinking, with the smoking, with drinking the coffee, having an unhealthy diet, which in refined sugars, and so on, everything would impair the frontal lobe. Remember how it was connecting to emotional intelligence? How do you think that his work would be if he would have an unhealthy lifestyle? He would not be able to be as present or to be emotionally available for his clients. He would have a heart of facade. And this was the point that his professor wanted to point out to the entire class, that your success as somebody coaching, helping people in the counseling room is actually determined upon how you live. It's based on science from the body, emotions, thought patterns, and sensations. Basically, your self-control, again, how you internalize it. And sometimes it's very good to seek the knowledge and experience of others. How would you deal in this situation? Because this is a struggle for me. I don't know what is up, I don't know what is down, what is correct, what is legal, what is non-legal. How would you pursue this very, very difficult task? The value of a friend, the value of somebody who have experience is amazing in certain situations. I have a list of people. If I'm facing something difficult, I know who to ask because I have good trust in their reasoning. Now to the concentration camp. When faced with seemingly meaningless situations, meaning can be an antidote to despair. Finding meaning in something that is very difficult is what highly resilient people is able to do. And sometimes we have a choice to make. You have a choice to make. There was a father and his son, they went to the zoo, and the kid was asking his father, as they came to the elephants, why is it that this elephant has a little rope around his leg? It could just very easily break it and go out because there wasn't a massive cave in front of the elephant. And so the father told him that when it was a baby elephant, it would have a chain around its feet, and it would be kicking and kicking and kicking and resisting and using all its elephant powers. It doesn't have horse powers, it's elephant, so it must have elephant powers, right? So it would be kicking and kicking, and when it got bigger, it would be giving a new chain around its leg, and it would be kicking and kicking and kicking. And as it grew, the chain would go bigger, until one time where they just needed to have a little bit of rope because then it will feel imprisoned. Similar story with lice. If you would take a lice into a jar, it will try and jump itself out, but if you have a lid on top of it, it will jump and jump and jump, and eventually it will stop jumping at its full capacity because it will be in pain. And after a while, it would only jump a certain height. If this lice were to get babies, they would mirror the parent, and they would only jump up to a certain height, just as they saw their parent. If they were to be let out of the jar, they would never reach their full potential because they had learned the limitations from home that they could only reach a certain state. And some of you here watching online is exactly what has been done to you. Somebody has caught you with change, which is maybe not very strong anymore, because what have happened in you is you have been on a journey, you have learned how to grow, you have become stronger, and now it's time to take a sword, a knife, a scissor, and to cut that ribbon. Or even to learn how to jump higher to reach your full potential. My last slide is the decision-making process that leads to action. That is the path to resilience. So the question that I have now to you is, what is it that is holding you back from reaching your full potential? What is it that you can do to make frontal lobe decisions where you will be able to thrive and where you would be able to be the best, strongest, happiest person that you can become? What is it that is holding you back? And when you figure out the answer to that question, you'll be set free, you'll be able to do amazing things, and you will have found your meaning and purpose also in life. And you will become more resilient than ever before. Thank you very much. Yeah. So I'm thinking we could do a break maybe, if there's anything else on the program, and I would be happy to do some Q&A if there'd be any question from my 3 different lectures, or any random health questions that you might have. I'll be happy to answer, but I think we've been in here for a little while. I think it could be nice to have a little break.
I think we understood very well the word resilience. I hope we will not forget this, and we can think about that. Now we're gonna have a song. Solveig and Sebastian, we're gonna sing a song for us, and after that we have some tea outside. And thank you. Thank you, Kasper.
We will sing a song about, or Solveig will sing a song about to put things into the hands of the Lord. And in the hands of the Lord, there I get to rest. There I am safe. There might be storms all around me, but in the hands of the Lord, there I am safe.
I Herrens händer, i Herrens händer, där får jag vila. stormar runt omkring mig, men i Herrens händer, där är jag trygg. Som när en fågel med bruten vinge ville flyga hem, men inte kan. Så kändes allt, ingen vind som bar mig. Nu flyger fågel, för jag fann i Herrens händer, i Herrens händer, där får jag vila, där är jag trygg. Det kanske stormar runt omkring mig, men i Herrens händer, där är jag trygg. Om du behöver någon som går med dig dit ingen annan har gått förut, så finns det en som vill bära din börda. Han finns hos dig till livets slut. I Herrens händer, i Herrens händer, där får jag vila, där är jag trygg. Det kanske stormar runt omkring mig, men i Herrens händer, där är jag trygg. Men i Herrens händer, där är jag trygg. Tack.
Feel free to get a bit of snacks, some teas outside, and if you'd be interested, I'll be happy to do some Q&A when we feel like coming back into the room again. So, yeah, however you please. Oh.
Yes. Okay, so before you go and refill your tea, we want to thank you from Vasa Adventkyrka. It has been very nice to have you here this weekend. We have a lot to think about and go through, and we appreciate you. I think it's good, it's not 1.5 months to New Year's when a lot of people are thinking in these terms, like maybe I could do some kind of lifestyle change and see what happens, and we can see that the results will be there if we do these things. So with that, we want to give you a little gift, also as a reminder of that you've been now in the wonderful country of Finland, and
definitely.
Of course. Get the woman, and it's your personal one.
All right,
with a K right there.
Right.
So
it's my first mummy cup. I never.
Okay, very nice. Well,
Amazing.
about time
Thank
that
you.
you got one. So, no, but so we ask you blessings on your the rest of your year and
Thank
what you have
you.
coming up.
Thank you. And the amazing thing is we don't have to wait all the way until New Year's to start anew. We can do our New Year resolution starting today.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Jo, nej men det var det. Ja.
Nå ja,
Alltså för de som vill, man måste inte vara med på Q&A men för alla som har
alltså
frågor.
jag trodde det var slut så därför så har vi
Oh, yeah,
ja,
selvfølgelig.
sången och det, men inte gör det
Det er
något.
sådan liten spontant.
Inte gör det något.
Yeah, you can sit and raise your hand if you have a question. Yeah, there is one person.
I've got to have everybody sitting down to hear my question.
Please sit down.
Thanks. Yeah, I was intrigued. Is this thing on?
Yes, it goes to the street.
Oh, it goes there. I see. Okay, so I have to speak loudly so the rest of you can hear it. Okay, I was intrigued by the piece of research that Harvard has done, where the father-son relationship had such an impact on midlife cancer. And I was wondering, have you any more comment? Did they make additional observations on it? And how would one go about teaching, because we have quite a few babies coming into our congregation at the moment, how would one teach the fathers how to do parenting in such a way that they have a warm and resilience-building relationship with their children?
Thank you, and very, very good, very relevant question. It wasn't just cancer; it was actually more about like diseases in later stage of life. And of course, this was just like one factor. It could also be the relationship between the child and the mother. But of course, within the science, they have to do something just very limited, and then you look at the effects. For example, they have tested on what happens with the sperm of men if they drink alcohol. And what has been proved is even if you were drunk 2 weeks before conception, the heart of the child will be 30% less healthy compared to if you had not conceived alcohol. So within the scientific fields, you do like very direct framing your hypothesis, and that is how you go around it. But how can we be better at raising up the children? I think mainly it's just being present. I was very lucky. I came from a very loving home. My dad was always present. My mom was always present. My dad would drive me to different activities. We would have a family meal, and one thing I noticed very, very early on was we would sit down, have dinner as a family. I would even come home from school peeling potatoes, carrots, learning a little bit about how to cook, and maybe this was how I gained like an interest and passion in cooking, which none of my classmates ever had. And so I could see that my relationship with my parents was better than my classmates, simply because we were sitting down, having a meal together, doing a bit of like prep together, spending that quality time. And I think that is the key word I'd like to emphasize: quality time. Because what happens if you're focusing upon your career, earning money, instead of being with your family? And I think this is one of the key things that is happening in our society today, because we want to have a big house, we want to have a big car, we are looking for exterior things where we forget about what is it that truly is important, and that is relationships. So I guess if we would focus more our time in relationships, instead of having to have a extra job just to have a better, more fancy car, I think we would already have stronger family and better ties as well. Does that answer the question? Yeah?
Makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, there's a question here.
Yeah, you were talking earlier about the effect of loneliness.
Yes, so about a question about loneliness.
You were talking about the effects of loneliness on health.
Yeah.
What are the major effects of loneliness on health?
You feel isolated, you start to feel inadequate. You think, am I good enough? You start to go down a rabbit hole of self-negative talk, and you start to compare yourself with others. Why is it others have friendships? Why is it that others seem to be popular? And why am I sitting here in my apartment at home? So you start to be very, very negative towards yourself, having doubts, and that is, of course, a cause of depression. So what we can do is try to do something meaningful. My suggestion yesterday was do some volunteer work where we can do something for others, and as others show gratitude of what we have done, we start to feel a warm sense in our heart that we made a difference in somebody's life. So that's very meaningful. What you can do around here in the community, I have no idea, since I don't know what is the need of people, but let's say that if you are lonely, it's very likely that others would feel the same. So if you would be willing to try out, invite people, have an open home, then people would be able to spend time with you with them, and you would feel less lonely as well. So that could be one example of how to deal with loneliness, if this is your own experience.
Yeah, so you're suggesting that even as a church, we should organize some activities for the community to
I would
reduce
say,
loneliness.
I would say, especially as a church, if a church has the biblical principles, that would be of caring for others. And for me, what is a church? A church is a group of people who have one goal in mind: to make a difference in the life of others. Of course, we believe that believing in God is a big difference. And actually, there's one interesting point in that. That is, people who believe or have faith, they are more resilient because they don't feel that they are alone. They have somebody who is a higher power, who have love and compassion and a desire for their wealth. And so if church members would believe that, wouldn't they try to replicate that in their own life with others as well? So I think it's very relevant, especially for a church, to do activities where others feel welcome, and also where people can gain friendships. And that's basically, for me, what church is all about. It's about connection, it's about friendships, it's about connections with people, and making a difference.
I think you mentioned in the first that processed foods numb the palate. Is it the same thing for like things like black pepper or chili flakes? And is there a healthier way to consume them? Like, are they healthier fresh or dried, or is there any way you can eat it safely?
Very good question. Thank you. Chili peppers and different hot spices are not very healthy for us. Actually, it numbs our nerve system. There's one type of treatment. If you have pain, you can get a special band-aid with chili oil. But if the chili oil is too long on your skin, you can actually do nerve damage. So what happens if we are consuming a lot of like spicy food? This would be cinnamon, unless it's silent cinnamon. It would be chili pepper and everything in the chili family. Black pepper as well. It irritates the nerves. And if we are dealing with an addiction, it's very beneficial for us to leave them out of our kitchen for at least a while until we have dealt and conquered whatever disease or whatever addiction that we're facing. For example, my introduction story with my younger brother's friend who had this cluster headaches. For him to stop smoking, what helped him was be on a healthy diet, low in salt, low in these type of chilies, because then he wouldn't be as easily tempted to smoke or to drink. What we can do instead of chili, it would be cayenne pepper. Cayenne pepper is in the capsicum family, which is the same as a bell pepper. It has a little bit of spice, but it doesn't irritate the nerves. Actually, cayenne pepper have a lot of health benefits to it. If you have a headache, you can get a shot of cayenne pepper. Take a small or half a teaspoon glass of water and drink that down. That will thin your blood and improve circulation, and usually the headache will also disappear. But it can be used in many different ways as well. So I'd say cayenne pepper is a very healthy, good alternative to chili.
If our addictions are related to the dopamine system, are there any supplements that help us to support the change of the habits and breaking of addictions?
That's a very good question, and unfortunately I don't have the answer to that one. What I would recommend would be a dopamine fast, and that would be not be on social media. Some say for a week, some say up to 3 months to have the best effect. Studies has been shown where a group of teenagers with ADHD, they didn't have their phones, they were not on media for, I think it was 2 weeks, and 70% of them no longer had ADHD. When they would get their phones back, then they got ADHD back. So we can see there's a big comparison or aligning with the media and with our behavior like ADHD, and it's very linked also to the dopamine response. So going on a dopamine fast would be very beneficial and would help us also to feel a normal amount of happiness again. Because when we get overrushed with dopamine, it takes more to give us simple pleasure in life. So going on a dopamine fast helps us to have our happiness levels on a normal base again. And this is, so imagine you have a graph. This would be our happiness, and this would be over time. Our base happiness would be here. What happens if you were taking cocaine, for example, or meth, would be or ecstasy, would be that your pleasure, the dopamine would skyrocket, and then shortly after you'd have a big crash. And with some drugs, it takes even a week to go back to the baseline. But with time, what happens with your baseline, it becomes lower and lower and lower. And now with drugs is you take drugs just to feel normal, just to feel a little bit of happiness again. But with time, it lowers. So by doing a dopamine fast over a longer period of time resets our happiness level. And healthy types of dopamine would be, for example, looking at a sunset. What happens is when we look at a sunset, this would be our baseline, it would go up and it would slowly go down. Taking a cold shower, the contrast showers, our baseline would be here, our dopamine would go up to 150%, it would stay high for 3 hours, 4 hours, and then it would slowly go down to normal baseline again. So there's certain ways of dopamine that is healthy, but a dopamine fast is very beneficial, especially for people with addictions. I hope that answered at least a little bit for your question. Do you know any pills, medication that would benefit yourself?
I was thinking at least you were saying like that we can take the flaxseed for tryptophan and omega-3.
Yeah, yeah.
I have been taking some tryptophan myself, but I'm thinking maybe it's better to take it from natural sources possibly and just supplement per need basis, I suppose.
Yeah.
And there are some supplements that may regulate for those who have the low level of those amino acids. It might regulate the dopamine levels, I suppose, the L-tyrosine, and I forgot the other one in the higher. But I was just thinking like if the dopamine level is the issue of addiction, maybe stabilizers that help people with ADHD or ADD might also help those with addictions. If they have, because those that I'm trying to take that helping to concentrate on certain tasks, help to have some kind of drive to do something productive. I suppose that's the question.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, ladies first.
Yeah, about addiction, I'm thinking, is it possible that addiction is just not true? That it's, instead of addiction, we can call it bad habit? That if we believe in addiction, we continue to do it.
Yeah, well, they're certainly connecting to each other. When it truly becomes an addiction, it is controlling your behavior. For example, it might be that you decide to isolate yourself from family because, let's say that if you would visit your parents, you'd be driving for 2 hours, you'd stay at their place for a couple of hours to enjoy a meal, then you'd be driving back. And in that time, you'd not be able to take or to smoke marijuana. And so it starts to control your time, your environment, your behaviors. You start to limit yourself because what will you do? You come on edge if you cannot get that fix. And that is where we have a very difficult addiction that is controlling how we behave. Where bad habits would be more like lying on the couch, eating an entire box of chocolate, and as soon as we look down, it's gone. It's not necessarily a habit because an addiction because we can decide not to buy chocolate, where an addiction is controlling what you spend your money on. For example, at some point, some years ago, I was working as a head chef in a cafeteria at a school, and some of the high schoolers at the end of the month, instead of buying a healthy salad or a sandwich, they would buy cigarettes or they would buy energy drinks in the local supermarket. And it was just very clear that they would go into the cafeteria and like, I don't have any more money. And then the next thing you see is them drinking a big half-liter jar of Monster or of energy drink. So it's controlling their behavior. They're deciding to go with the fix instead of something healthy.
Yeah, I understand this, but if you go and buy snus in the store and it's or cigarette, it say that this is harming, this is causing addiction. If you believe it, you will be addicted. Is it maybe commercial? So you believe it, you get addicted because we are so easily manipulated. That's just a thought.
Like that, yeah. Well, as I would say, it's a matter of understanding the definitions of a bad habit and the definition of an addiction. And if you are to say, well, it's not an addiction, what often happens is you are making an excuse. And actually, this is what a lot of people who does. I remember I heard a presentation of a former drug addict, and he didn't see himself as a drug addict, because for him, somebody who was a drug addict would be taking very, very dangerous drugs. What he was doing, he was drinking and he was smoking hash. He wasn't taking like cocaine or meth or ecstasy, but clearly he was highly addicted to the substances. He just didn't want to see himself as one with an addiction, and that, I believe, is often the cause. We don't want to be in that category of somebody with an addiction, because we see it as a weakness, and sometimes we can see it's only happening to like weak persons, and then we make up a self-delusion where we can call it a self-habit. Does it make sense?
I still want to go on with this addiction, because I go to gym every day, and for me it's an addiction and a good habit.
Well, we have good habits. We have good addictions.
If I take marijuana every day, I love it, and I take it every day. Why it makes it an addiction? It's maybe a habit that I like to continue.
Okay.
I mean, it's all about your own choice. That if you take responsibility about your choice, you understand that, okay, this is a bad habit and this is a good habit. Does it make a change in the result? I mean, maybe I can, instead of explaining it as an addict, because addiction is something that you cannot manage. But if you know you have a bad habit, maybe you can manage it better. That was my...
Okay.
But we don't need to continue more about this. But my second question was that you said the first evening on Friday that you recommend plant-based milk instead of cow milk. But for me, I think that there is a lot of sunflower oils and some emulgeringsmedel. So what do you think about that? Is that good?
Some emulsifiers are very, very negative, especially for our gut health. They can even make small tears. It can cause, if it's very bad and if you're very sensitive, leaky gut issues, and it can also have a negative effect on your mind. So yes, just because it's vegan doesn't mean necessarily that it is healthy. The products I use, I try to look at the ingredients lists, and I try to go with the most natural, the most healthy solution. I like the brand Alpro. They make some good, healthy, plant-based milks and yogurts, and this is one of the brands that I personally buy, because the packages I've read was good ingredients that they're using. But it is true there are some products that has unhealthy emulsifiers, and some are more sensitive to the emulsifiers, and that is a negative on their health.
Before I go to my question, I used to do stop smoking clinics, and usually it was 20 to 30 people in the room. And I used to say to them, not a single one of you is identical to any other smoker in this room.
Very true.
And you'd get this pattern. I mean, there were people who had been smoking for 20 years, and all of a sudden they had a motive. They could quit smoking clean cold, no relapse. And then you had others who come to the clinics 4 or 5 times, 6 months later, always with a problem. But the question I wanted to ask is about salt. Because a little earlier you mentioned in one you should quit or reduce your salt. But there is a vast difference, and I'm confused. What would you say about sea salt and Himalayan salt and rose salt?
Yes, so if we have road salt, or what is called natrium chloride, aka table salt, it only has 2 minerals. In seawater, you have 91 minerals, and during Second World War, as soldiers were losing blood on the battlefield, they didn't have blood transfusions. So what they did was they could take seawater directly into their body, because it was the same amount of minerals that you have in your system, and that was saving a lot of soldiers' lives. And therefore my recommendation is always whole salts, as we call them, and that is salt that has the highest amount of minerals in them. That would be Celtic salt, it would be Himalaya salt, and it would be sea salt. That has the highest amount of minerals. So in seawater it's 91, 92 minerals, and in Celtic salt, in sea salt, in Himalaya salt is about 81 minerals. Celtic salt is my own favorite, because it's also rich in magnesium. It has 3 different sources of magnesium, and that is just helping the water to go inside of your cell due to osmosis even better than any other type of salt. And what table salt, or the salt that you throw on the streets here, is doing is opposite osmosis. It's basically taking the water out of your system, out of your cells, and you'll be going to the toilet more frequently, leading to higher blood pressure. But if you're getting healthy salt, it helps you to thin the blood. It's easier to obtain the water, again due to osmosis, and that will lower your blood pressure as well. And again, you wouldn't have to go to the toilet as frequently using healthy salt. Hi.
Hi. I have a question. What's your opinion about taking multivitamin tablets or vitamin D, especially if we are living in a country like Finland without much sun?
Yeah, I believe that you are in need of taking D supplements. And there's a big link between diseases and the lack of D vitamins in our system. I don't remember what is recommended, but it's recommended to have like good sources, and of course good levels of them once a day or every week, depending on the tablet that you're taking. Me myself, I take as well as other supplements. I'm on a plant-based diet. That means that I am in need of getting B12. And the B12 that I'm taking is a type called methylmecobalamin. And because I'm having that, the methyl is a building block for nerve cells, helping my body to produce new brain cells as well. And the D vitamins that I'm taking is made of plant materials. I think it's algae, and that is my own choice with a plant-based source. Often the non-vegans are taken from sheep, because they are out in the fields and they get exposure to a lot of sunlight, and that sunlight get trapped within their fat. I think it's called limonene, and then that is produced into a capsule. And I'm not the biggest fan of the picture of going to a sheepfold and licking on a sheep to get my D vitamins. So it's just a mental thing for me. I'm just thinking like the this is my childish things coming out. I just imagine like having a sheep as a lollipop to get my D vitamins. So my preference is a plant-based one. One thing that is very interesting, that is with because a lot on a plant-based diet is in lack of iron, and the iron that you have in plants, the molecule itself is quite small. If this would be the receptor, let's say that the tip of my little finger would be able to go into the receptor, and then we just get exactly what we are in need of. But in meat you have what is called heme iron, and instead of just being the little tip of my finger, heme iron would be like the entire knuckle, but it has the same thing that can go into the receptor. But instead of just a tiny bit that goes into the system, it's the entire thing. And that's one of the reasons why scientists are suggesting that that is a cause of cancer, because we get too much iron into our system. And that's again the reason why I'm getting iron from plant sources rather than heme iron that you would find in meat. So it matters like what type of supplements that we are buying, and some supplements are of course better than others. I would go to a health food store getting a better quality. I'd ask them, because usually they are better with the understanding of what is good, or the same with a pharmacy, because me as a layperson, I'm not too much into knowing like what is good and what is not so good, so I would get their opinion, as they have a better understanding of the products.
Ja, jag frågar på svenska här, men du översätter jag. Nej, jag tänker på alla de här veganska produkterna i ett stormarket. Det finns ju så otroliga mängder, och det är veganköttbullar och det är vegankorv och allt sånt här.
Ja.
Så jag har funderat liksom hur hälsosamt det är riktigt. Och sen ännu att där är ju också massor med oljor. Att vilken är bättre? Jag har funderat när man går, det finns så otroligt, och det står vegan, men det är inte kanske så hälsosamt.
Yeah, let me just quickly say that
Yeah.
in English as well. So the question is about food items that is pre-made, like it could be vegan falafels, it could be meatballs, it can be vegan sausages. Are they healthier than the meat alternative? In some cases, yes. In some cases, they're actually more hard to digest than the actual meat. And it comes down to how processed it is. But as a general rule, everything that is processed is not healthy. No matter if it has a label on it where you can read it's vegan, or if it's a label where it comes from a cow. So what I'm suggesting, and the type of food I was making when I was working at these health retreats, was whole food plant-based cooking. It would be everything homemade from scratch. You have the fresh vegetables, you have the lentils, you would make a patty, something. But of course, this type of cooking takes much more time than just opening a package with meatballs, throwing them in with a bit of tomato sauce, and boiling some pasta. You have a meal within 10 minutes, where if you were to buy tofu, crumble them down, add some spices, all of a sudden it takes 20 more minutes just to get the same result. So yeah, it's not necessarily healthy just because it has the vegan label. Some products are more unhealthy if we look at it with the eyes of nutrition, and sometimes they're healthier.
Ja, och hur var det med de här oljorna?
There's two types of oil that I have in my kitchen. That is olive oil and coconut oil. That's the only two oils that I use for that would be desserts and for cooking with, because any other oil or most other oil, the burning point will be quite high, and they start to be oxidized. And there's a link between refined oils being heated up and cancer, and different inflammation in the body as well. So olive oil is a good oil to use for frying. A better oil for frying would be a neutral coconut oil. But olive oil is still fine to use unless you're making a stir fry, if you're just frying something with a pan. And if it's not heated up for more than 2 hours, then it's still a safe, healthy oil to use.
Får jag ännu fråga om de här färdiga små bönor, linser som håller i evighet.
Ja.
Så hur är hälsosamma är de då? Att de är färdiga i den där, det där vattnet eller så, ja.
Yeah. Most of them just contains water and salt. So what I do is I take them through a sieve. I get rid of the water and I rinse them, and then I can use them in my food. The reasoning why I'm taking away the water is the water can contain something. It could be leptines. It can be different things that are not super healthy for us. It's kind of like the waste product from our lentils or our legumes, and that is often producing gas as well. And that's why some people, when they try a plant-based diet or a vegetarian diet, that they find themselves to have a lot of gas, and then they want to not have that experience, and often it comes down to the boiling water of the legumes. So what I do, for example, if I'm cooking chickpeas, would be I soak them overnight, I throw the water away, I rinse them, I boil them, I throw that water away as well, and then I use them into a stew, for example. It's the same with beans. I do the same with lentils, unless it's red lentils. If it's red lentils, I take them into water and I rinse them like this. I would do with rice, and I do this 3-4 times until it's no longer white, because then I have washed out the non-healthy things that we find in the red lentils, and then I can just cook them and eat them with no gut irritations at all. Okay. Any other questions? All right. All right. Well, then I want to say thank you for coming out, and I've enjoyed spending my time with you, and I hope that all this information will be put to practice. And as we mentioned a few moments ago, you don't need to wait for New Year's to make a resolution. You can make a healthy, good choice starting even today.